Good afternoon and welcome everybody. My name is Sarah Platt and this is your May Child Nutrition Updates and Reminders webinar. Before we get started, I'd like to go over the format for today. This presentation will be recorded and it will be available on our website in the near future. Also, feel free to enter any questions that you have in the Q&A. We're going to start by covering any recent updates and USDA memos and reminders for this month. And then we will cover upcoming training events that we have available. And then finally, we'll jump into our topic for the month, which is the upcoming changes to Buy American requirements that are to be implemented for school year 26, which, believe it or not, is right around the corner. For updates and reminders, the school year 25 annual financial report must be completed in CNP Web once the current year is closed. So this is when you report to us your program financials from school year 25. We use this information that you're pulling from your business office to determine compliance with the requirements of operating a nonprofit school food service account. This includes the pricing of adult meals and the limit of having more than 3 months average expenses in the nonprofit school food service account. The deadline for the annual financial report to be submitted to us for approval is September 1st. And speaking of adult pricing, the cost that you charge adults must be greater than the cost of producing the meal. So once you complete the annual financial report, it will calculate your per meal cost. You are going to want to use this figure to make sure that your adult meal price for next school year is compliant. And finally, this is a great time of year to complete your required procurement training if you've not done so already. That's a new requirement that started this school year that food service directors and anyone working on procurement with school nutrition must complete annual training on procurement. We do have a recorded training available on our website that will meet this requirement for you. So there are 3 recent memos that USDA has released. The first is talking about, it's a reminder of the way that schools can use program funds to purchase local foods now that the federal local foods for school grant has been canceled. So as a reminder, you can use geographic preference during the procurement process. So this means including language along with the definition of local in the specifications and also in the scoring matrix when you're evaluating vendor responses as part of your procurement processes. And then a reminder too of using micro purchase procedures. This is a great way to target local producers because with micro purchasing, there's a smaller purchase threshold that you have to follow. And you're also sharing or rotating your purchases among qualified vendors. So this method just lends itself easily to purchasing locally. And then also the USDA DoD Fresh program. This is when you can allocate USDA food entitlement dollars to purchase produce and specifically local produce if that's available in the product catalog. This allocation would have already been done during your annual survey process that you completed, but if that's not something you did for this upcoming school year, please keep it in mind so that when you complete the annual survey next year, you want to make sure you allocate funds for DoD Fresh. And the paid lunch equity guidance was recently released for school year 26. This applies to schools that charge students for meals, so it may not apply to many of you on the call today. But if you are a school that charges students, this guidance will be available on our website soon. It will be required to be submitted as part of your school year 26 school nutrition program renewal application in CNP Web if you are a charging school. So again, this is only for programs that are not eligible for Maine's no charge meals, and they are charging a paid student meal price. And then the third memo serves as a reminder of the recent changes, including the crediting of vegetables at breakfast. So starting in school year 26, this current school year, you could substitute vegetable for fruit at breakfast if you chose to. Starting in school year 26, if you are offering vegetables in place of fruit at breakfast more than once a week, you must offer 2 different vegetable subgroups. And also this memo serves as a reminder that program funds may not be used to procure raw or processed poultry or seafood from China. It also mentions upcoming changes to Buy American, and we're going to go into those in a minute. For upcoming training events, registration information can be found in the Thursday update, so you'll want to refer to that if you would like to register for any of these. The first one on May 22nd, Jody's doing a webinar on completing the annual financial report I just mentioned in CNP Web, so that's at 1:30. On June 10th, it's our June webinar for end-of-year updates and reminders, again at 1:30. And then in August, the Maine School Nutrition Association is having its annual conference on August 12th and 13th. It's always a great event. I encourage you to attend if you're able to. And that one will be at the Doubletree Hotel in South Portland. And then in August, on the 14th and 15th, is our new director boot camp. This is by invitation only. It's specifically for brand new school nutrition directors. So if you know of a new director or if you are leaving your position, if you can let us know so that we can make sure that the new director receives an invitation for that.
Hey, everybody, we're working on getting Sarah back up and running.
Okay, sorry about that glitch. Here we go. We're now moving into the Buy American requirements for school year 26. So in April of last year, USDA announced a new final rule, which went into effect on this past July 1st, 2024. But the more restrictive changes tied to this are not required until this July 1st, 2025. And many of those changes will be phased in. So the final rule made changes to nutrition standards, meal pattern flexibilities, and updated some policies related to program operations. And these were the topic of our April webinar, which if you weren't able to attend or if you want to listen to it again, it was recorded and is available on our website. And then the link to the final rule is also on the slide. If you'd like to read up on this information, you can copy that down and have some bedtime reading. Let's first review what the Buy American provision is. This has been around for a while, and it requires school food authorities to purchase domestic food as much as possible. It does not apply to equipment or supplies or foods that are not a component in the meal pattern, so spices, for example. And there are a couple of exceptions to this rule that are allowed if you choose to use them. And if you do, you must maintain documentation. So the first exception that would allow you to purchase a non-domestic food product is if that food product is not produced domestically in sufficient quantities. So think of mandarin oranges or bananas, for example. And then the other exception is if the domestic product is significantly more expensive than the non-domestic alternative. During administrative and procurement reviews, we assess compliance with Buy American by looking around your storeroom, walk-in cooler, freezer, looking for products that may be non-compliant, and then also looking at language in procurement documentation that you're specifically requesting food products that are compliant with the Buy American provision. So like I said, this requirement is not new. It has been around for a while, but there are changes in place for the upcoming school year. So currently for school year 25, the Buy American changes included requiring you to add the language to procurement documentations, documents. So that would include your procurement procedures, solicitations, contracts, or contract renewals. It also established an exceptions list that has items that are approved to use as an exception to Buy American. So if an item is on the list, then you don't need to maintain documentation for this. So that's at 48 CFR 25.104. You can bookmark that and go take a look at the items. There are automatic exceptions to Buy American. But starting in school year 26, you're essentially going to need to start tracking your food expenses. So every dollar spent on domestic and non-domestic foods, because there's now going to be a limit or a cap on the amount of program funds that can be spent on non-domestic purchases. And this cap is phased in over time. So for school year 26, you can spend no more than 10% of your total food purchases on non-domestic product. That goes down to 8% starting in school year 29 and 5% in school year 32, which sounds really far away. Probably be here before we know it though. Tracking food purchases this way is definitely going to be a learning process. It's not something that we currently do. And I think the tricky part here is just figuring out exactly how you're going to do this, because we don't often have access to country of origin information. It's not always on the product label or on your order guide or invoice. So this is definitely going to be a learning process. There is an optional tracking form available for your use. It can be found on our website. I'll have a screenshot of the page on the last slide so you can see what that looks like. Again, this is optional, but it might be worth checking out and starting to use as you get familiar with this new process. And keep in mind that dollars spent on USDA foods and any product for the fresh fruit and vegetable program do not count towards this new requirement. So let's talk about what you can start doing now to prepare for next school year. So just take a moment to think and feel free to throw it in the Q&A. But out of curiosity, do you think that you currently spend more than 10% of your food purchases on non-domestic items like bananas, mandarin oranges, pineapple, some 100% juice? So that means if you spend $100,000 on food in a year, the 10% cap would be $10,000. So to get started, it would be a good idea, if you haven't done this already, to start having conversations with the vendors that you procure your food products from. Let them know about this requirement. Find out if there's currently a way to track this information. What data do they have on domestic versus non-domestic product currently? Maybe do they use different codes for domestic versus non-domestic products? So start having that conversation and do some brainstorming on what they currently have available and what they might be able to get for you starting for next year. And then in your kitchens, while you and your staff are putting away product, you should be looking at the labels anyway, but while you're doing that, make note now of any product that you come across that's not domestic. You can track this on the monthly inventory that each of your kitchens are currently doing. Start making note of items that are not domestic. And then at the end of the school year, you could request a velocity report from your vendors and then use this to track commercial food products that you purchased. And again, identify the products that you know are non-compliant. And this will give you a sense of where you are in relation to the cap for next year. And then start looking at your menus. Some of you have already started doing that for next year, doing some menu planning, but look at what modifications could be made so that you're offering less domestic product. So maybe you currently put bananas in the fresh fruit bowl every single day. Well, maybe next year you're going to limit that to 1 or 2 days a week. And by doing that, you're purchasing less non-domestic product. And then do you have USDA food, either entitlement leftover or product that you're not using, make sure you maximize what's available to you in USDA foods, because all of those products are compliant with Buy American. Then after you do a review of this current year's food purchases to get a sense of where you stand, if it does look like you're not able to meet the 10% cap for next year, you can request a temporary accommodation. Again, this is temporary and you would need to submit documentation showing a thorough review of your current food purchases. There will be more information coming out about this process soon, so keep reading the Thursday update and we'll let you know about what that process will look like and what would be needed for documentation. And then finally, I wanted to show you on our webpage where you can find information related to Buy American and what we talked about today. So on our financial page, when you scroll down to the, there's a blue heading, a blue bar for procurement and Buy American. And when you click on that, you will see the Procurement 101 training I mentioned earlier, that's required annually, but then the memos that I referenced today and information about the spending cap as well. And that concludes the May webinar. We certainly have plenty of time for questions. If people want to throw anything in the Q&A, we'll do our best to answer them.
We have one question at the moment.
Okay, what is it?
What about tuna?
So that's an excellent question. I do not believe that tuna is Buy American compliant. So unless you have documentation saying that it was raised domestically, you would count that as one of the exceptions, and it would go towards the cap for next year.
Is this also for FFVP?
Nope, fresh fruit and vegetable program is exempt from this requirement, so you would not include that when calculating the 10%. Okay, does not look like there are any more questions. Feel free to reach out. If you think of something later on, feel free to reach out. Can reach anyone in our office with any questions you might have. And thank you for your time and attention today. Hope you have a great rest of the month, and we'll see you here for the June webinar.